All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but two things right now. Jack and shit. Jack left town. Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
What was that ruckus? What ruckus? I was just in my office and I heard a ruckus.
Describe the ruckus, sir.
Does this mean we're not friends anymore? Not me. I'm in my prime. You're out of your mind. Ain't it cool?
First you want to kill me, now you want to kiss me. Blow. Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the gun.
What's up, everyone? DJ Anubis.
And DJ Neko.
Here with you on the Meltar Radio podcast with another movie review. This time we're doing 2025 Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, Hailee Steinfeld, Miles Caton, Jack O'Connell, Jamie Lawson, Omar Miller, and Delroy Lindo. It is a 2025 American action supernatural horror film, and basically, the film is, let me see here, Coogler again, blah, blah, blah. Just trying to figure out if this gives me any kind of idea.
It was in 1932.
Right. I'm just trying to see the description they give on Wiki is not very good. So basically, this is the synopsis. Trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. And this actually has Michael B. Jordan playing dual roles as both Smokestack, if you didn't catch that.
And I did not realize it was Michael B. Jordan playing both roles.
Yeah.
So that just shows how great they styled him for both roles and the way he acted for both roles.
But yeah, so, one thing that Neko and I were kind of doing while we were watching this is just kind of figuring out what they were doing. They were basically like bootleggers trying to make money and profit, off something that was already kind of being done. They're having to battle the Klansmen, but they also have to kind of work with the Klansmen. So they were, I think, purchasing a building.
It's an old sawmill.
Yeah.
And they basically were in Chicago, and they robbed the Irish gang and the Italian gang and brought down some Irish beer and some Italian wine and a lot of money, and came back to the Mississippi Delta, which is where they're from. And this is 1932, so Prohibition is still in swing. They wanted to open up their own juke joint where they were playing the blues, and they wanted to make a little money. One thing I found quite interesting is exactly how the scenery and that itself was its own character. If you think about it, like everything was just so right on. Like it really put you in that time period, and it made you really think like, okay, this is where we are. And that's them in their little juke joint.
Which is a really cool scene during this point, because there's this point where Ryan Coogler, uses it. So you'll see like modern people dancing in there, like it was switching times.
And that's the kid playing is Preacher Boy. He's their younger cousin.
Yeah.
And when they heard him sing like the first time when they were in their little car together, they were like, oh, you got this voice. Oh yeah, you're gonna make some money tonight. And
yeah, so basically, you know, Smoke and Stack and of course Sammy, they're traveling down there, reacquainting themselves with people. So we end up coming across Mary, who is played by Hailee Steinfeld, which is an amazing job on her part in this. Is Stack's ex-girlfriend. She's white.
She's has mixed race
right.
in her. That's
but
right
she's
there.
Clearly white. But you know, she also really loves Stack, and you know, like kind of felt betrayed that he just took off. But there's still this tension between black and white people during this time, obviously, because the Klan still does exist. But then again, we get introduced to these vampires that, you know, Remick is the main guy that ends up basically infecting a Klan's couple. And then all of a sudden they, again, come at this club that Stack and them are creating. And obviously the night just starts to unfold where, you know, it's almost like the virus in this one with the vampires is very quick. So you get bit and it's not long before you're jumping up.
Yeah, you're not Anne Rice, drink for me and you live forever. Right. And then you go in like your fever dream before you become a vampire. It's almost like a zombie. You get bit and you go.
And it's also a little different too, because even though vampires always kind of had that telepathic ability, this one all stems from like Remick pretty much being the host. And
it's so like a hive mind.
Yes. But it is interesting because Coogler did give them the ability to feel pain, sorrow. They do recall memories. So even from the bodies that they've had, they still remember that. In fact, that's how Remick kind of learns. It's like taking on other forms, and it's like this shared brain that you can, you know, all this information, you become smarter, you know, the history. Like Remick's pretty old. He's from the Irish, which we saw cool. Right around this point where he's doing this like Irish dance, river dance, because that's where his bloodline is. But the rest of them, of course, are all from the South. So their dances and their music is bluesy and stuff like that. But this was one of the coolest scenes in here. When people were talking about the movie having all these like musical numbers, I was thinking more like fucking Rocky Horror type shit, but that's not how this is playing out. This is entirely different.
They use the history and the type of music to kind of fit the plot. And he's Irish, right? Remick's Irish, and the Irish were slaves, and Irish step dancing became a thing because they were dancing. They were dancing in the fields, and you want to keep your upper body from moving. So that's how, like, when you watch Irish step dancing, it's kind of like they're very stiff at the top, but very quick on their feet. So I like that they were blending that, because that's something else that was happening kind of around the same time and prior, like with the Irish. That's why, like, in history, a lot of Irish did come to the United States to kind of get out from under the thumb of the British. And, you know, the Irish, they were farming and not getting any food in return. It was all going back to the British. So they understand, in a sense, maybe not quite to the extent as the African American Black slaves of the US, but it was a similar thing. So that's why there were so many Irish immigrants at this time, and a lot of Irish people were kind of shunned away during like the Great Migration to the United States. So you see, like, the in the movie you can see how, like, you can run these parallels. Another interesting thing that I learned that I didn't realize was, you know, this is after the Civil War, after, you know, the ending of slavery. They were showing a lot of sharecroppers. And what I did not realize was there are pockets of Chinatowns, which we knew all over the United States, but for different reasons. And in the Mississippi Delta, there were an influx of Chinese immigrants to be sharecroppers because they thought that was their ticket in to the United States. A lot of them, saved up and ended up opening groceries. And the Chow couple in this movie, they had a grocery store on one side of the street, which was for the white patrons, and a grocery store on the other side of the street, which was for the Black patrons. And I kind of did a little bit of digging of the history of that, and it's particularly accurate, especially in that area where there are some completely Chinese settled areas in Mississippi. Because at first I was like, why is there an Asian couple? For what reason? And they were probably descendants of, and they speak with a Southern accent, so they're probably descendants of other people who came as sharecroppers, and now there's like a family business of these grocery stores.
Yeah, it's the acting in this is phenomenal. So when people were talking about it and reviewing it and saying how great it was, I was always kind of hesitant because I am guarded whenever people like lose their shit about a movie. But it isn't like Coogler hasn't had a good history. He's the guy that directed both Black Panther films. I enjoyed Wakanda Forever, which was my favorite of that year.
Creed.
Yeah. So, yeah, Creed is amazing. And again, Michael B. Jordan is in that. So Jordan himself. But this is probably the best performance overall that I've seen from Jordan, doing dual roles and just very emotional, connected. One thing I find is kind of interesting that Coogler says that he had the American heavy metal band Metallica on his mind when he was laying out the stories of rhythms and beats.
Oh, yeah?
I wanted the movie to have the simplicity and simultaneously the profound nature of a Delta blues song, but I wanted to have the contrast, variation, and the inevitability of a great Metallica song like One. So he was kind of like, and the soundtrack is amazing, like the blues. I'm not opposed to blues at all. I actually like blues. I don't own any, but I've always liked it when I've heard it.
I like it because it's kind of like jammy too. Like when you blues, you saw them in the juke joint, man. They were going on and on and on and just like vocalizing and jamming out.
But kind of like back to that dance scene when they're in the club early before the attacks, like they're going through the timelines of modern day as well. Like the way he incorporated everyone from that time, you would see like a break dancer in the middle of the crowd, and then you would switch over to, I think it was almost Lenny Kravitz's guitarist was there for a minute,
and then a ballerina.
Yeah,
like it was amazing.
So you just had like, and then you kind of hear the beats of the different eras too. So you might hear like a rock, and then a little bit.
And then they went, there was like the corner where they were like doing the.
Yep.
And one critic made a comment on Rotten Tomatoes. This is a story told through its music, and it is so well done. And I have to agree with that. I think what they were really portraying is how spiritual and how important music is to everyone for whatever reason.
So if I had one negative to say, and it's not even really a negative, there's always movies and art that pays tribute to other pieces of work.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I said to Neko, and she was thinking the same thing, is this is like From Dusk Till Dawn.
But in reverse.
But director Ryan Coogler said the two of his biggest influence for this film are From Dusk Till Dawn and The Faculty in 1980, which deals with hive mind. So that it's
that's great.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I said the blueprint is very much From Dusk Till Dawn because the movie is sort of like two halves of two different things. You're dealing with just human stuff, a couple of bootleggers trying to start up a club. You got drama just within the family, within the girls and everything else. And then the vampires are introduced. That's sort of how From Dusk Till Dawn works. The only difference is in From Dusk Till Dawn, the club is full of vampires, whereas in this case, the vampires are trying to get in. The club.
The Titty Twister.
The Titty Twister.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Titty Twister in From Dusk Till Dawn. This was Club Juke.
Club Juke.
So I also really wanted to speak about Annie, who was Smoke's girl.
Yes.
So okay, I'm just making sure I got that
because that's what was confused me at first too. Because there were times I thought that because Stack obviously was with Mary at one point, but then I thought it was Stack who was with Annie, but that was actually Smoke. So that's where I got lost a little bit until we figured it out later on.
So Annie, I believe came from like actual slaves from West Africa, because she was speaking I forgot the language, Yoruba, but it said it in subtitles, and I looked that up, and it that's where we got a lot of slaves at that time. And she was always very into her talismans and her mojo bags. And one thing that she specifically said was like, don't let me turn. Like if something happens, just kill me. And
that wasn't even like a wait, like she was still kind of dying at the time. So it's like she hadn't even turned and he impaled her, which
and she said
that's
do
what
it.
She wanted. Yeah.
She said do it because they lost a daughter. And you see him come to visit Annie and visit the grave. And Annie runs a store, which is on sharecropper land. And another interesting thing that I kept seeing was, because this is the South, and because you're working for sharecroppers, and this just didn't happen in sharecroppers, it happened in mining towns, it happened in steel mills, until there was a law that was passed that you can't do this anymore. You got paid in what's called like scrip, and it's only money that can be used in that town at certain places. So Annie's place is, on the sharecropping land, so she can accept the scrip. My mom told me many, many years ago, there where Anubis and I came from, there used to be a very large steel mill, and that used to happen there. There was like a commissary, and you could either go and get like an IOU, and they would take it out of your paycheck. And they even had a small town built like right next to the steel mill, that if you were at a certain level, if you were a boss or a foreman, that was like part of your package. You got to live there as like for free, before they ended up demolishing the town and like expanding the steel mill. So the same thing with miners. It's like you could only buy at the commissary at the mining. They really explored this because they opened this place to attract everyone. And when they would come in, a lot of these people didn't have a lot of like real money. He's like, oh, I only have 25 cents, but here I got, 2 wooden nickels here. And the brothers were kind of at odds about that. Like, one really felt like, okay, we should let everybody in, let them have a good time. We want to attract people. This is opening night, right? Like we want people to keep coming back. Tonight, it's okay. The other was like, he wanted the money right away. Well, he pulled out like his pad, and he's like, you see that? We're going to shut down if this happens. Like, so no, we can't do this anymore. This was all unfolding as like all the craziness is starting to unfold too.
I can see both sides there, because on one hand, you're trying to build your clientele, but at the same time, if you're lowering the cost, then you can't cover your costs. So
well, I agree too. And I kind of agree with like, tonight's the opening night. Going forward, be like, no guys, that was a one-time deal. Because there's no way to exchange your wooden nickels for US dollars. There's no way to exchange it. So the only thing they could do was go to like the sharecroppers, commissary stores and buy things. But the idea could be that they could take that money or script and use it themselves to pay people who are sharecroppers to do favors for them. And that is something that I don't know if they really thought about, but everything was kind of coming to a boil at the same time. And it was really crazy because it was all like the music and people are having a good time. And
when you think of a movie that's considered like a piece of art, this is that type of film. Like, despite the influences from Dusk Till Dawn, it never goes into the crazy, gory moments that from Dusk Till Dawn does.
And it's not like
but it's not really designed that way. Like we have the vampires, but it's actually serving a whole different purpose. In fact, because the movie's still kind of new, I'm not going to give out spoilers. I will say that people that watch this stay through the credits because there is a post-credit scene. And to me, that post-credit scene is very touching. Like it's not what you would think it would be. It's a very touching scene, just from many points of view. But also, apparently, Hailee Steinfeld, who was Mary in this, she wrote and recorded the original song "Dangerous" for the film. So she does have a musical background. She was a singer. She was in Hawkeye, the series, as Kate Bishop. She was also in those Pitch Perfect movies. So she has some chops.
Okay. All right.
You know who I'm talking about now. Yeah.
I really found this movie, like, I want to watch it again.
Yep. I'll probably own it. Like, it's that good.
I did not expect to even care about it. And usually when I'm watching a movie, I'm watching it, I'm scrolling on my phone. But this time, like, I wanted to scroll on my phone because I wanted to look things up, like the influence of Chinese Americans in the Delta. So like, I'm like, pause. I need to read this to tell you that this is why the Chows are there. And like, it was so much information coming at me at one time. They really took their time with their writing and putting in the effort to make this feel authentic.
Yes. And I'll say this too, and this is the trap that we can run into, especially someone like myself who's not the biggest fan of woke stuff.
This is not woke.
People were trying to make this film to be like woke, and it's not woke at all.
No.
You have the Klansmen there, but it has a point to why they're there. That's the time period. That's the reason why.
It's also a driving point in the plot.
Yes.
Because Remick, the couple that he turns are in the Klan.
Yep.
So,
but interestingly enough, he's like, it's almost like you have the Klan, you have the black people, and then you have the vampires. And even the vampires, with Remick leading, they want to like again, as she said, it's a hive mindset. They're trying to almost, you could say it's almost like exterminating the other races, but it's only because they want everyone on the same page. It's the faculty coming into effect. If everyone gets along, everyone has the same mentality, there's no war, there's no fighting, there's no nothing. And they were planning, even if they were going to kill everyone in that club and make them part of the family, they were going to destroy the Klan. It was all part of their own plan too. So it wasn't ever like they took on the Klan thing and then said, oh yeah, we're going to be white supremacists. That wasn't what the point was, because they had plenty of people of color now in their family, and they were all dancing, and it's really great stuff. And apparently even with the blues stuff that they were playing in the club, that was all done live with everyone doing their dancing live and while they're filming. So that's incredible. So again, Coogler, many kudos for just doing it and executing that perfectly, because the film is just a lot of fucking fun. It's a bit lengthy, but it's all worth it because it's compacted, and it also fleshes out everybody. Everybody's fleshed out.
I am the biggest critic of films that take too long and they take advantage of time. This didn't do that, I don't believe. I really, really feel like every minute on screen was important. like for advancing the plot, for giving the scenery, for making you have like an emotional connection to people, because you got to realize Smoke and Stack are gangsters, right? Like they're running game up north, and then they steal and they come back down, and then they're trying to make money off of their friends, and they got a big stack of cash, and they're trying to come back. These are people, but they're believable people, and you also kind of get attached to them. Like you're like, these are just normal guys that are set in 1932, and you really, really believe and connect with all, even some of the like tertiary characters, like the Chow couple. They only have a little bit of, main screen, but it seemed just so authentic. And the guy who was the bouncer, he was literally picking cotton with his wife on the side of the road, and they come up and they're like, "Hey, we got a job." And he's like, "No, I have a wife now. I have a kid. I'm not going to do that." And his wife's like, how much money? Yeah. So it just, everybody kind of, even though they're smaller characters, you get like a small glimpse of what their life is and what they're, just enough to really understand. Like, so we know he is, working as a sharecropper. Delta Slim, he's basically, he plays at gin joints and, drinks whatever cheap whiskey he can get his hands on. And they wanted to hire him to play piano.
Yep. And that's kind of cool because, again, Stack and Smoke were going around and basically just collecting talent. That's how they were going to open their club, is say, they kind of like advertised it. It's like, hey, free beer, but even though it's not free beer, but you go around and say, got a club, it's for us, our people, because most of the other ones are kind of mixed or just white. So they were starting their own club, and he had the guitar Sammy, which was going to be a draw, which he knew. And then of course he got Delta as well. And then Annie was going to cook the food there.
Oh, and she's doing her fish fry. Annie's doing her fish fry.
So he was smart. He was going around just plucking talent, and that's how he was going to draw people in, and it did. But obviously money was a factor, and that's sort of how Remnick and his crew were able to kind of somewhat weasel their way in. Was they had money, they had like old gold. So Remnick's been around for a long time, clearly. He only came across the two Klansmen, couple, because he was being chased by Choctaw Indians.
He was burning because the sun was out.
So that's a clear thing that's consistent with vampires, stabbing them, of course, in the heart. But
garlic.
Yep, garlic was a big thing. But
one scene, it was just like the thing.
Yeah, everyone eat this piece of garlic. And then, of course, Delta, he's like, no, I just had too much to drink, and that's really crazy.
He's like, I'm going to throw up.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. So I love the nods to classic horror films from Coogler. It's really great.
And he did it on purpose.
And this was the first horror film for Jordan, which, he wasn't sure if he'd ever like horror films, but now he likes them from doing one. So,
but this is more than just your, Freddy Krueger. Even though Freddy Krueger is amazing, this was so like multi-dimensional, so many folds and facets to this movie. Like you were saying, at the credits scene is just the cherry on top, and it is meant, like, it brings the movie full circle like you'd never believe.
Yeah, because at that moment with Sammy at the very end, like, I'm like, that could have been done so many different ways because of their past. And again, I'm not going to give too much away with it, but you would think it's something that Sammy says is like, the question he asked to the other person is, before the sun went down, that was like the happiest day of my life, because he was playing for the first time in front of people. They were all like loving what he was doing.
He was having such a good time.
Yeah, because he was so young and all that. And so obviously the other person's like, yeah, it was the greatest day, So that's the emotion that Coogler brought into it, which I didn't expect. And I really, really enjoyed that because it shows me he can write these very complex characters within the horror genre. And the way that he just managed to intertwine the music and it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like Rocky Horror or anything. It didn't start off and just everyone starts dancing all over the place. It was consistent with what was going on in the plot. And a lot of the other music was simply just in the club and they're just playing. So it's part of that experience that you're dealing with. It's not something that's going to take you off into another piece of the film, which is nothing wrong with Rocky Horror, but that's the way that's designed.
That's that movie. That movie. That is what that movie is. That movie is
right.
Insane. Love, but insane. This movie, it uses history and music and weaves it through this really intricate plot that, again, I'm like, yeah, it's on HBO. Let's watch it. It just came on HBO. We'll check it out. I didn't even care. It was in the movies. I was like, I didn't even care. I care.
I care.
I care. I really love this movie, and I haven't had the itch to watch like a movie back to back in a while. Because you know how I get when I like something. You know what I mean? Like when there is a movie or a show or something that I like, I'll just watch it and watch it and watch it. And
well, the other thing that it's kind of sad, but it's kind of funny, but it's always how I know that Neko is like liking something is I would look over and she was constantly watching this. Constantly.
Mm-hmm.
She's not looking at her phone too often. She's like watching it. And that tells you that if you can keep her engaged with any kind of film, then you're doing a good job. Like that's the thing.
I'm not that picky, but it is easy if something is going a little slow or.
But it was cool because we didn't talk a whole lot. We just said a couple of things as we were watching. But by the time it finished, she goes, "Well, what'd you think?" And I said, "I love it." And she said, "Me too."
Yeah, it was just like, well then.
Because really, we were just quiet. Like, if there's a movie that's okay, but we're just kind of like tuned out a little bit, we'll just talk about other shit.
Or like if it's something that's really silly,
we'll
like
start doing Mystery Science 3000.
Yes, we'll joke about the movie. Or if it's something
but we're both just kind of like
we were just engaged.
Yeah.
I like am I wrong saying this should be up for some kind of awards? Like
it better.
I mean,
Rotten Tomatoes, both audience and critics.
It was like 97. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if it's not up for awards because there's so many good things. You can get it for fucking musical tracks. You can get it for the acting.
Visual.
Yeah, like visual's great. Story's great. Writing's great. The dialogue's great.
Every person had amazing acting chops, regardless of how big or small their role is.
I mean, I already like Steinfeld because I did like her in Hawkeye. Like I said, then when we saw Pitch Perfect, I thought she did a good job.
We watched Pitch Perfect like 15 years later, but we still loved it.
But watching her in this was like a world difference. Like this was like such a game changer for her in terms of how she portrayed herself. And she did a lot of research on the character and stuff like that. So hats off to her. And
very
she
mature
just got married
acting.
To Josh Allen, of course. Buffalo Bills quarterback, so
good for her.
Yeah, she's doing well. So
oh my god.
Yeah, so hats off to her. So what is your rating for Sinners 2025?
Would it be bad if I gave it a 10?
Nope.
I cannot find anything wrong with it. Like
I said, if I said that because it has a blueprint from Dusk Till Dawn, there's a reason for it because the director just said he was influenced.
Same thing with like The Thing. We
and it's not even really a negative. Like I said, you can pay tribute to something and still be your own original piece.
So like I think when we saw Top Gun Maverick, like I gave it a 9.5. And one of the things I said was rewatchability for me. And that's a big deal for me. I like to rewatch the same shit over and over again. You can just ask him. I've never rewatched Top Gun Maverick, and it was a beautiful movie, and I think it was awesome, but that's why I think I gave it a 9 or a 9.5. I am going to watch this again soon. And rewatchability to me is huge because it scratches some like, you know, primal thing in my head, right? Like it activates something in my head when it's like, this is hitting me in a way. I mean, there are so many movies I've done this to. Silver Linings Playbook, The Lost Boys. I mean, I'm just off the Rocky Horror, you know, just there are certain movies, it's either my mood or whatever, but if I think it's rewatchable, you're automatically a 10. Maybe a 9.5 if you're really corny or something, but like Grandma's Boy, I gave it a 10 because it's Grandma's Boy and it's a 10. It is something in this movie, and I love historical movies. I just recently watched The Help again. I read the book years ago in my book club, and then the movie came out and the whole book club went to see the movie. I like when people really pay attention and really try to get details of like historical fiction correct. I know this is a vampire movie, so there's, you know, I don't think there's any written evidence of vampires in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta, but what they did to make it seem so real and how they had the scenery and the plot and the people and little details, like the whole thing about all the exchange of money, like money, 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 money. Everybody was just like falling for the money because this is a very impoverished area where they were all slaves really not that long ago, maybe a generation ago. And now they're sharecroppers and they're getting paid in script. So like everything about this, I'm like, my brain was just tuned in. I give it a 10. I don't care.
No, I'm right there with you. It's a 10 out of 10 easily.
High five.
It's definitely one of the better movies of 2025. So it will definitely make my top 10. But I say it might be number one.
I mean,
right
like
now,
we haven't gotten a lot.
No, I have 5 only this year that I've and it's another slow year. We're halfway through it, and I'm finding it harder. Like last year, I came with 8 that I could really say that I was like decent enough to get into the top 10. I could have put a couple of 8s or 9s in there, but it's like usually I save that for the 10 out of 10s, and I have to be honest with myself. So if I don't feel like there's enough there, then I don't do it. That doesn't mean I didn't see everything. So like,
I hate when we see, like, you did this year, you saw something and you're like, oh my God, it's from 2024. This totally would have made my.
Right. So like, just like earlier today, I was doing my review for Miss Campbell, 10 out of 10 film is Trauma. But in 2022, this would have made my top 10.
But you just saw it, yeah.
Right. So I just saw it. So.
And I hate that, especially the smaller, you know.
It's like a hidden gem. So, like, I'm glad I can do the review and talk about it and all that. So, but at least now we got a chance to see this. Everybody was talking about it. So, I agree with the consensus that this is like one of the better pictures of the year.
I cannot believe. I maybe it's because I'm like being like that little hidden rebel, like, oh, it's the best, whatever. I don't want to see it. Who cares? I'm not interested. And then I'm very interested, like immediately. Everything looks good. Everything. And I just want to tell you everything I feel. And I just want to do 1,000 more researches on about like how sharecropping was and why is Mississippi the way it is and blah, 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 blah. And
we just don't have time.
I just don't have time. Like, but I do want to say, like, you know, why Mississippi is the way it is. This is 2025. You know, this takes place nearly 100 years ago, right? Like 1932, 2025. It's quite a jump. You really can see like the historical, like deep seated, like racism in this movie, which does not make it woke. I'm not saying this is not a hate on the white
it's
people.
Historically accurate.
It is very historically accurate. So then I like fast forward in my head to like thinking about things that have happened over the years. And when I hear things about like, I think Mississippi, like they didn't desegregate until the 80s or something, when most places were desegregating in the 60s. And I'm like, seeing something like this come to life on screen when it really makes more sense. And it's, you know, reading about what happens and reading about Jim Crow. And funny enough, The Help takes place in Jackson, Mississippi as well. So like when you're hearing about these things, it's so much different than somebody putting it to life in a movie, with vampires too, you know, so the vampires added in some flair. But the vampires, again, they were more like the icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
They were really...
This is a lot like I would feel if I had to compare it to Godzilla -1. In -1, Godzilla was kind of like an afterthought, even though he's like the guy that we go to see. But in that story, with everything that was going on
after World War II and rebuilding,
so Godzilla is kind of just like the afterthought. He's like the bonus plan. It's the same thing here. The vampires are just, they're the afterthought. You're looking at what's going on with the actors, how well they're doing the music, and then the vampires show up. And it's like, oh wow, this is cool. We got this nice little twist, but they're not the priority of the film.
Yeah, it would still be a movie without the vampires. Yes. It would still be a movie without Godzilla in -1, because that's how well the actors were and how well written it was.
Yep.
So 10 out of 10 from DJ Neko. Neko approved.
All right. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Sinners? Have you seen it yet? It's out there on Max and I believe Hulu as well. Let us know your thoughts. Hit the like and subscribe button, and we appreciate the support as always.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next time on the Meltdown Radio Podcast.